I know, Vivian said quietly. The reality had kept her awake most nights. Unless you accept my help. Devon slid a business card across the table. Rachel Thornton, it read, Senior Partner, Whitman, Shaw, and Garrett. Rachel is the best intellectual property litigator in the country. She's won cases against Apple, Google, and IBM. I've already spoken to her about your situation. She's ready to take your case immediately, pro bono. Vivian stared at the card, afraid to hope. Why would she work for free? Because I'm paying her firm a 7-figure retainer annually, and I'm asking her to do this as a personal favor. But also because Rachel believes in what you're fighting for. She started her career representing independent inventors against corporate theft. This is the kind of case she lives for. The offer was almost too good to be true. Vivian's instincts screamed caution. What do you get out of this, Mr. Ashford? Nobody does something like this without expecting something in return. Devon smiled, a genuine expression that transformed his serious face. I told you I'd be honest. Here's my proposal. We win this case and win it decisively. We go for full judgment, punitive damages, criminal referrals, the works. When you have clear, undisputed ownership of your encryption technology, my venture capital arm gets first right of refusal to fund your startup. My startup? Vivian almost laughed. I can barely afford rent. Today. Tomorrow you'll own one of the most valuable encryption algorithms in the cybersecurity industry. The question is what you do with it. Devon's eyes gleamed with something between excitement and challenge. You could license it to some corporation and collect royalty checks for the rest of your life. Or you could build something that matters, your own company, your vision, your rules, with your money. As an investor, not an owner. You maintain majority control. Sterling Ventures would provide seed funding, probably $15 million to start, in exchange for a 25% equity stake. You'd be CEO, you'd hire your own team. You'd make every decision about the company's direction. Vivian's mind raced. A week ago, she'd been eating ramen and wondering if she'd lose her apartment. Now a billionaire was offering to bankroll her dreams. Why me? You could hire 100 programmers. Because programmers are common. Visionaries are rare. Devon's voice carried absolute certainty. I've built my career on identifying transformative talent. When you described polymorphic key rotation in that courtroom, you weren't reciting theory. You were explaining something you'd built from scratch, something that exists nowhere else. That's not education, Ms. Hart. That's genius. Before Vivian could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Nathan Pierce. New offer, 5-minute, full rights to your algorithm, NDA. Accept by 9 a.m. tomorrow or face total war. Your choice. She showed Devon the message. His expression darkened. There it is. The velvet glove around the iron fist. He met her eyes directly. If you take that money, you'll be comfortable. You'll pay off your debts, maybe buy a house. But your encryption algorithm will disappear into CyberForge's patent vault, and Marcus Caldwell will continue destroying innovators like you. 5 million sounds like a fortune until you realize what you're actually selling. And if I refuse? Then tomorrow morning, Rachel Thornton walks into that courtroom as your attorney. We fight this properly. We expose exactly what Caldwell did. We set a precedent that protects every independent creator in this industry. And when we win, not if, when, you build something that changes the world. Vivian looked at the business card, then at Devon's intense, honest face. She thought about the 2 years she'd spent perfecting her algorithm in the quiet hours between midnight and dawn. She thought about the joy of solving an impossible problem, of writing code so elegant it felt like poetry. She thought about Marcus Caldwell's contemptuous smirk. Mr. Ashford, Devon, if I do this, if I trust you, I need to know this isn't just business for you. He was quiet for a moment, considering his words carefully. My first company was stolen from me when I was 23. My partner, someone I trusted, backdated documents to claim he'd funded the initial development. I was young, broke, and had no proof. I lost everything. His voice carried old pain. I rebuilt, obviously, but I never forgot what it felt like to be powerless while someone took credit for my work. When I saw you standing alone in that courtroom, I saw my younger self. Except this time I can actually help. Vivian made her decision. She picked up the business card and tucked it into her pocket. Tell Rachel Thornton I'd be honored to have her representation. Devon's smile could have lit the darkening cafe. He extended his hand and Vivian shook it, feeling the calluses on his palm, the marks of someone who still wrote code despite having billions. "Get some sleep tonight," Devin said. "Tomorrow we go to war." As Vivian walked home through the city streets, her phone buzzed again. Another message from Pierce, this time offering $7 million. She deleted it without responding. For the first time since losing her job, Vivian felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope mixed with fierce determination. Marcus Caldwell had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed that because she was alone, she was weak. He was about to learn the difference between the two. Tomorrow would be very different indeed. The verdict and new beginning, Rachel Thornton, arrived at the courthouse like a force of nature in a tailored charcoal suit, flanked by two associates carrying bankers' boxes of evidence. She was mid-50s with silver-streaked auburn hair and the kind of commanding presence that made Nathan Pierce visibly uncomfortable when she shook his hand with calculated courtesy. "Ms. Hart," she said warmly, taking Vivian aside. "Mr. Ashford brought me up to speed. What you did yesterday was brilliant, but today we finish this properly. Are you ready?" Vivian nodded, still slightly overwhelmed. "I trust you." "Good, because we're not just going to win. We're going to make history." When Judge Holbrook called the court to order, Rachel immediately filed a motion to expand the case. "Your Honor, based on evidence uncovered during discovery, we're adding charges of corporate espionage, trade secret theft under the Defend Trade Secrets Act, and fraudulent misrepresentation. We're also requesting punitive damages and a criminal referral to the U.S. Attorney's Office." Nathan Pierce looked like he'd been struck. "Your Honor, this is outrageous." "Save it, Mr. Pierce." Judge Holbrook cut him off. "I reviewed the demonstration from yesterday. I have questions about how your client obtained Ms. Hart's code." Motion granted. What followed was a masterclass in legal warfare. Rachel's first witness was Sophie Chen, one of Vivian's former colleagues at Cyberforge, who'd quit 3 months after Vivian's termination. "Tell the court what you observed," Rachel prompted. Sophie's voice was steady despite her obvious nervousness. 2 weeks after Vivian was fired, Marcus Caldwell called a mandatory meeting for the encryption team. He presented what he called a new direction, complete source code for an encryption system. He told us to implement it immediately. I recognized Vivian's coding style instantly. She has a distinctive way of commenting her functions, almost like annotations. It was all there. "Did you question Mr. Caldwell about the code's origin?" "Yes, he said it was purchased from an external contractor. But when I asked for documentation, I was told that information was confidential." Sophie glanced at Marcus, who was staring daggers at her. 3 other engineers noticed the same things I did. 2 of them were fired within the month. The 3rd quit. Nobody wanted to question where the code came from after. "That," Rachel projected. Internal emails onto the screen. Communications. Between Marcus and his development team that Rachel's forensic investigators had uncovered. In one particularly damning message, Marcus wrote, "Stop asking questions about source origins. Just implement it. Fortress Key launches in 6 weeks regardless." The jury was transfixed. Devin watched from the gallery, his expression unreadable, but Vivian caught him nodding slightly when Rachel landed particularly devastating points. The technical expert Rachel brought in was Dr. James Benedict, a cryptography professor from Stanford. He'd analyzed both Vivian's original code and Cyberforge's Fortress Key line by line. "In my 30 years of reviewing software," Dr. Benedict testified, "I've never seen a more clear-cut case of code theft. Not just inspiration or similar approaches, actual identical functions, identical variable naming conventions, identical error handling structures. The probability of 2 programmers independently creating code this similar is effectively 0. It would be like 2 authors writing the same novel word for word by coincidence." Nathan Pierce tried to fight back during cross-examination. "Isn't it possible Ms. Hart copied Cyberforge's proprietary framework?" "No," Dr. Benedict said flatly. "Ms. Hart's Git repository shows continuous development dating back 23 months. Cyberforge's code didn't exist until 7 months ago. Time moves in only one direction, Mr. Pierce." Scattered laughter rippled through the courtroom. By the 3rd day, Cyberforge's defense had collapsed. Rachel presented forensic evidence showing that Someone with Marcus Caldwell's login credentials had accessed Vivian's personal cloud backup, which she'd briefly connected to the Cyberforge network during a late-night work session 2 weeks before her termination. The courtroom gambit. The morning air bit through Vivian Hart's threadbare blazer as she climbed the courthouse steps, each marble slab feeling like a mountain beneath her worn sneakers. 26 years old, brilliant beyond measure, and so broke she'd walked 3 miles to save subway fare. In her backpack sat her laptop and a flash drive containing the truth, evidence that Marcus Caldwell and his empire, Cyberforge Industries, had stolen the encryption algorithm she'd spent 2 years perfecting. She'd worked 60-hour weeks for Cyberforge, believing Marcus's promises about innovation and collaboration. Then one Friday evening, security had escorted her out without explanation. 2 months later, Cyberforge launched Fortress Key, their revolutionary new encryption system. Her system, her sleepless nights, her code, line by stolen line. Courtroom 7C smelled of old wood and broken dreams. Vivian found her table, lonely and small. Across the aisle, Nathan Pierce arranged his battalion of associates with military precision. Pierce was legendary, a legal assassin who specialized in destroying pro-SC plaintiffs before lunch. Behind him sat Marcus Caldwell, checking his phone with casual contempt, his $5,000 suit catching the light. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Holbrook. Judge Holbrook had silver hair pulled into a severe bun and eyes that missed nothing. Vivian's research suggested she was fair but impatient with theatrics. "Ms. Hart, you're representing yourself?" The judge's tone carried skepticism. "Yes, Your Honor." Vivian's voice cracked. She cleared her throat. "I created the encryption algorithm that Cyberforge claims is theirs. I have documentation proving—" "Your Honor." Nathan Pierce rose, his voice smooth as poisoned honey. "The plaintiff signed a comprehensive employment agreement. Every line of code produced during her tenure belongs to Cyberforge. This case is nothing but vindictive harassment from a disgruntled former employee who couldn't handle the rigors of corporate software development." The words hit like physical blows. Vivian fought to steady her breathing. "Ms. Hart created this algorithm at home, on her own equipment," she countered, holding up printed documentation. "These Git commits show development timestamps between midnight and 4 a.m., long after business hours on a private repository Marcus never had access to." "Allegedly private?" Pierce interjected. "Your Honor, Ms. Hart lacks the forensic credentials to verify her own evidence. Any competent data analyst knows timestamps can be manipulated. Furthermore, the concepts underlying Fortress Key were developed using Cyberforge's proprietary framework, which Ms. Hart was exposed to during her employment." For 90 brutal minutes, Pierce dissected her credibility. No, she wasn't a lawyer. No, she hadn't commercialized software before. No, she couldn't afford expert witnesses. Each no felt like another nail in her coffin. The jury, ordinary people confused by technical jargon, looked increasingly sympathetic to the confident corporate lawyers. In the back row, unnoticed by most, Devin Ashford sat perfectly still. He'd been dragged to court by his attorneys for an unrelated patent dispute, now delayed. Bored, he'd wandered into this courtroom. But Vivian's testimony had caught his attention like nothing had in years. She'd mentioned polymorphic key rotation with quantum-resistant lattice structures. That wasn't amateur hour. That was genius-level cryptography. Devin had built quantum dynamics into a $10 billion empire by recognizing revolutionary technology when he heard it. And Marcus Caldwell? Devin knew him well, a parasite who built his fortune by acquiring startups and gutting them. During recess, Devin found Vivian in the hallway, slumped against the wall, defeat written across her face. "He's using misdirection," Devin said quietly. "Pierce isn't attacking your evidence because he can't. He's attacking you." Vivian looked up, startled. The man before her was perhaps 40, dressed simply but expensively with intense dark eyes that seemed to calculate everything. "Who are you?" "Someone who understands your algorithm better than those lawyers ever will." He stepped closer, his voice urgent. "When court reconvenes, request a live demonstration. Run your code and their Fortress keys side by side." Your implementation uses recursive entropy pooling. I'd bet everything they didn't understand that dependency when they copied it. Under stress testing, theirs will fail. Show the jury what words can't explain. The judge might not allow it. Judge Holbrook has a computer science minor from MIT. She'll allow it. Devon glanced back toward the courtroom. Make them see the truth, Ms. Hart. Don't let Pierce define your brilliance. Before Vivian could respond, the bailiff called them back. Her hands shook as she approached the bench. Your Honor, I request permission to demonstrate both encryption systems live before the court, Pierce exploded. Objection! This is theatrical nonsense. Then you should welcome it, Mr. Pierce, Judge Holbrook said dryly. If Ms. Hart's claims are baseless, she'll only embarrass herself. I'll allow it. The projector descended. Vivian's laptop screen filled the wall. She opened 2 terminals loading both encryption systems. Then she initiated a stress test. 10,000 simultaneous encryption requests with randomly generated keys. For 30 seconds, both systems performed identically. Pierce smirked. Then Cyberforge's Fortress key stuttered. A cascade of errors flooded the right screen. Memory consumption spiked. The system began dropping encryption requests. Vivian's original algorithm hummed along flawlessly, elegant and efficient. The courtroom fell silent. Even the jury understood what they were witnessing. One system was a racehorse, the other a broken-down mare. The flaw you see, Vivian said quietly, exists because they didn't understand the recursive entropy pooling function I designed. They copied my code but missed why it worked. That error is their signature of theft. Judge Holbrook stared at the screen for a long moment. Then she looked at Marcus Caldwell, whose face had gone ashen. We'll adjourn until tomorrow morning. Mr. Pierce, I strongly suggest you and your client reconsider your position. The gavel fell like thunder. As the courtroom emptied, Nathan Pierce cornered Vivian, desperation replacing his earlier smugness. $2 million, right now. Plus NDA, this goes away. Vivian looked past him to where Devon Ashford stood watching, a slight smile on his face. No, she said. I want justice, not hush money. For the first time in her life, Vivian Hart felt truly powerful. The battle wasn't over, but she was no longer fighting alone. The courthouse steps felt different under Vivian's feet as she emerged into the fading afternoon light. Behind her, she could hear Nathan Pierce barking orders at his paralegal team, their earlier confidence replaced by barely controlled panic. Marcus Caldwell had left through a side exit, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. Ms. Hart. Devon Ashford appeared beside her, moving with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to command. We need to talk. There's a cafe 2 blocks from here. Will you give me 20 minutes? Vivian studied him carefully. She'd learned the hard way that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Why are you helping me? What do you want? Honest questions deserve honest answers, Devon replied. Let me buy you coffee and I'll tell you everything. The cafe was warm and nearly empty. Devon ordered 2 cappuccinos and led her to a corner booth, far from prying ears. When he sat across from her, Vivian noticed for the first time the fine lines around his eyes, the weariness that suggested sleepless nights spent building something from nothing. My name is Devon Ashford. I'm the founder and CEO of Quantum Dynamics. Vivian's eyes widened. Even she, who rarely followed tech news, knew that name. Quantum Dynamics had revolutionized cloud computing infrastructure. Devon Ashford was worth an estimated $8 billion. I stumbled into your trial by accident, Devon continued, but nothing about what I saw was accidental. Your encryption algorithm isn't just good, it's transformative. And Marcus Caldwell is exactly the kind of predator I've spent my career fighting against. He pulled out his phone and showed her a news article from 3 years prior. Caldwell acquired a promising startup called Neural Path. Brilliant founders, revolutionary AI architecture. Within 6 months, he'd disbanded the team, shelved their product, and sold off their patents to the highest bidder. Why? Because their technology threatened one of Cyberforge's legacy revenue streams. He'd rather kill innovation than compete with it. Vivian felt her jaw tighten. So this is about revenge? It's about principle, Devon corrected. But I won't lie. Seeing Caldwell finally face consequences would be deeply satisfying. He leaned forward, his intensity almost uncomfortable. They'll come at you again tomorrow. Pierce will offer you more money. Maybe 5 million, maybe 10. They'll bury you in legal fees if you refuse. They'll tie you up in appeals for years. They have infinite resources and you have none. Your Honor, Rachel said, her voice ringing with controlled fury, Marcus Caldwell didn't just steal Ms. Hart's algorithm. He systematically planned the theft, executed it using his administrative access to company systems, fired her to prevent her from realizing what had happened, and then launched a product based on stolen intellectual property. This isn't a civil dispute. This is a crime. Marcus Caldwell finally took the stand, his earlier arrogance replaced by defensive hostility. Under Rachel's cross-examination, he crumbled. Mr. Caldwell, did you personally access Ms. Hart's cloud backup on March 14th? I don't recall. The server logs don't forget. Yes or no? It's possible. I review many files. Files that didn't belong to Cyberforge? Files stored on a personal account? Silence. Did you believe you had legal rights to that code when you accessed it? Marcus's attorney whispered urgently in his ear. On advice of counsel, I invoke my Fifth Amendment rights. The courtroom erupted. Judge Holbrook gavelled for order. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. In the matter of Hart versus Cyberforge Industries, the foreman read, we find in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. We award compensatory damages of $15 million for lost earnings and business opportunities. We award punitive damages of $30 million to discourage similar corporate misconduct. We further recommend criminal investigation into defendant Marcus Caldwell's actions. Vivian's legs nearly gave out. Rachel caught her elbow, steadying her. We won, Rachel whispered. You won. Judge Holbrook addressed the courtroom with grave satisfaction. Furthermore, I'm granting Ms. Hart full ownership of all encryption technology derived from her original algorithm. Cyberforge Industries is hereby enjoined from using, selling, or distributing Fortress Key or any derivative products. Mr. Caldwell, you should contact Criminal Defense Counsel. This court is referring your case to federal prosecutors. The gavel fell one final time. Devin was waiting in the hallway when Vivian emerged, surrounded by reporters shouting questions. He gently guided her through the crowd to a quiet corner. $45 million, Vivian said, still in shock. I can't. You can, and you will. Devin's smile was genuine and warm. You fought for what was yours, and you won. But this is just the beginning, Vivian. The question now is, what do you want to build? 6 months later, Secure Vault Technologies occupied the 20th floor of a gleaming building in San Francisco's financial district. Vivian stood in her corner office. Her office. Still unbelievable, watching the sun set over the bay. Her company had 23 employees now, brilliant engineers and developers she'd personally recruited. Secure Vault's encryption services were already being used by major banks and healthcare providers. Industry analysts valued the company at $200 million, and they'd only just launched. Devin had been true to his word. Sterling Ventures had provided the initial funding, but Vivian controlled every decision. She'd built something real, something that mattered. A knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. Devin entered, carrying 2 bottles of craft beer. Celebrating? Vivian asked. Always. Your latest client contract just closed. Congratulations, Ms. Hart. You're now securing data for 1/3 of the Fortune 500. They touched bottles, and Devin settled into the chair across from her desk. Over the past months, he'd become more than an investor. He was a mentor, a friend, and lately, something that felt increasingly like more. You know, Devin said quietly, when I saw you in that courtroom, I thought I was helping someone who needed rescuing. I was wrong. You didn't need rescuing. You just needed someone to believe in you as much as you believed in yourself. Vivian felt warmth spread through her chest. I couldn't have done this alone. Maybe not. But the brilliance was always yours. He paused, seeming uncharacteristically hesitant. Vivian, I need to confess something. My interest in your case started as business. Watching you fight Caldwell reminded me why I got into this industry in the first place. But somewhere along the way, my interest became personal. Personal how? Vivian's heart was racing. The kind where I find myself thinking about you at completely inappropriate times during board meetings. The kind where I volunteer to help with technical problems just to spend more time in your presence. Devon's usual confidence wavered slightly. I understand if that's complicated given our business relationship, but I needed you to know. Vivian set down her beer and moved around the desk to stand in front of him. It's only complicated if we let it be. Devon stood, and suddenly they were very close. Is that a yes? That's a let's find out, Vivian said, and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, then deeper as months of tension and mutual respect transformed into something neither had planned, but both had wanted. When they finally broke apart, Devon was smiling. Best business decision I ever made. Helping me sue Cyberforge? No. Walking into that courtroom on a random Tuesday? Vivian laughed, truly happy for the first time in years. You know Marcus Caldwell was sentenced yesterday? 3 years for trade secret theft. I heard. Justice finally caught up with him. It's strange, Vivian mused, leaning against her desk. 6 months ago, I was broke, alone, and convinced the world was designed to crush people like me. Now I'm running a successful company. I helped set legal precedent protecting independent inventors and... She looked at Devon, feeling bold. I might be falling for a billionaire. Might be? Devon raised an eyebrow. Definitely am, Vivian corrected, pulling him close again. Outside her office windows, the city lights began to twinkle to life. Somewhere in that vast urban landscape, other Vivian hearts were probably fighting their own battles against injustice, wondering if truth and talent were enough to overcome money and power. Vivian hoped her story would reach them. She hoped they'd understand that justice, though rare and hard-won, was possible, that standing up for yourself, even when terrified, could transform everything. That brilliance didn't require pedigree or connections, just courage and the refusal to let thieves define your worth. She'd walked into that courtroom with nothing but truth and determination. She'd walked out with justice, a company, and a future she'd never dared imagine. Sometimes, Vivian thought as Devon's arms wrapped around her, the right person appears exactly when you need them most. Not to save you because you're strong enough to save yourself, but to stand beside you and say, I believe in you. Now let's change the world together. That, Vivian realized, was the real victory. Not the money or the courtroom triumph, but the knowledge that she'd fought for herself and won. Everything else, the company, the relationship, the future, was simply what happened when someone brave enough to stand alone discovered they didn't have to. The algorithm of justice, Vivian thought with a smile, sometimes calculated in your favor. You just had to be brave enough to run the program. The end.